So thank you for joining us for our orientation for first-time commissioners and others to the Presbytery of Greater Atlanta. We're really excited about you being with us on Tuesday at Calvin Center for our spring stated meeting. I have a presentation as well that will hopefully kind of outline a little bit about what we're up to and give us a guide for our conversation today. As And please feel free to interrupt us if you have any questions along the way. We'll do our best to answer them for you. So the first question, we talk all the time about presbytery. What is the presbytery? What is a presbytery? According to the Book of Order, the presbytery is the council serving as a corporate expression of the church within a certain district and is composed of all the congregations and ministers of the word and sacrament within that district. The presbytery, so here's the presbytery is not the staff. The presbytery is not a building on Ponce de Leon Avenue in Atlanta. The presbytery is you. It is the churches and the ministers of our region. Um, and the so and in Greater Atlanta, there are 18 counties. I think it's actually 19. I miscounted one time. That means we have 86 congregations, and it's really 83. We have three congregations that have concluded their active life and just have not been formally dissolved. But across those congregations, we have over 29,000 members in our 18 counties. We are actually, by the number of members in our congregations, we are the largest presbytery in the Presbyterian Church USA. We also have about 30 new worshiping communities in the presbytery and 5,000 participants in those. On the minister side of things, we have 415 or so. It changes every so often as ministers come and go. We have 415 minister members in the presbytery. So that's who we are. What does the presbytery do? So the presbytery is responsible for the government of the church throughout its district. Those 19 counties, 86 churches, and for assisting and supporting the witness of congregations to the sovereign activity of God in the world, so that all congregations become communities of faith, hope, love, and witness. Again, quoting that from the Book of Order. So we're responsible for government of the church in our region, and just as important, if not more so, to assist and support the witness of our congregations. We've got that down to 8 words in the Presbytery of Greater Atlanta. You see it on our logo when we say we are growing healthy, vital congregations and equipping healthy, innovative leaders. Those 8 words really describe well what we're up to as a presbytery. We want to make sure that our congregations are growing and healthy and vital, and our leaders have what they need to be healthy and innovative and solid in their work. So that's what we're up to as a presbytery. Brad, do you want to talk about who people might see at a meeting?
Sure. So when you get there, and I think Andy said you can expect probably 150-ish individuals that will be there during the day. Those who identified as we went through the introductions as ruling elder commissioners, you are elected by your church, and churches, depending on size, there's a parity program so that there is good representation among the ruling elder commissions. So you're elected to come from your church. I was going to say represent, but when you come, your church, just as your members did when they elected you as a ruling elder, they're entrusting you to be that voice, to use the discernment, to use your prayer time, to use God's grace in helping make decisions, many of which are routine. Some, like any, if you've served on a nonprofit board or any board, or at the session level, you're going to run into some where it's great to know what your members think, but but you're not there to represent them. You're there to really hear God's call and work on that. Well, we also have minister members, and our minister members, as y'all know, our teaching elders are not members of an individual congregation, but they are members at the presbytery level. So when Andy sends out the invitation list, everyone who is a member of the Presbytery of Greater Atlanta as a teaching elder is going to get an invitation. And as y'all know, we have a wonderful diversity of minister members, some who are in a traditional pastoral role in a congregation. We have others that are doing God's work in a variety of other ways, teaching at seminary, teaching at college, etc. But if they are a member of the Presbytery of Greater Atlanta, they're extended an invitation. You'll get a chance to meet our presbytery staff. Some of you may have had an opportunity as she visited you or visited your church. Our executive presbyter, Aisha Brooks Johnson, will not be with us. She is on a short sabbatical. So if you choose to come to the next presbytery meeting, hopefully we will have her back. And Andy, I believe tomorrow is Friday. So tomorrow, I think, is when she actually graduates with her doctor of ministry. So she'll be the Reverend Dr. Aisha Brooks Johnson when she returns to us. And if you haven't had the opportunity to meet her, be prepared. She's bubbly. She just puts a bounce in your step whenever you get to meet her. As you know, we have various committees of presbytery and we have commissions, and our committees operate and bring back recommendations for the full body to determine and act upon. Our commission members are, and Andy, help me on this if I stumble. Our commission members are authorized by the presbytery at our stated meetings to take on and act on business as described in the terms of their commission call. So with the first five letters being the same, it is not unusual for any of us who've been around the block a few times to errantly sometimes call a committee a commission and a commission a committee. So, and Andy is there to correct us if we miss. And then we have corresponding members, and with Andy showed the slide with our new worshiping communities. What we wanted to do and what was appropriate to do was, while the representatives from these new worshiping communities are invited to attend, they will not have vote like you, but they will have voice. And it's important, as y'all can imagine, and if you've got congregations or new worshiping communities meeting within your building facilities, you know how important they are to the fabric of the presbytery, but also to how we grow the presbytery. So you might you might see some folks, or you will see some folks that are coming as corresponding members, and then visitors, observers, those who just might have never been to Camp Calvin and might ride along with one of you just to come down. They're there to observe. They do not have voice. They do not have vote. So that will be the folks that will help us on Tuesday. Andy, anything else that you would add to that?
No, I think that you've hit all the right marks there, Brad. You've mentioned some of these things as well, but you might just it's a good reminder for sure.
Yeah, and you can see on the first, that's from our books of order, our constitutional documents, and then we pull from Robert's Rules of Order. One of the things I think you'll very much enjoy about this, as I have, is that if you served on other nonprofit boards or government boards, even are more restricted. Usually there's not a whole lot of time for worship in any of those settings. And one of the things that I have found particularly wonderful about attending and meeting at the Senate level, at the General Assembly level, or at the Presbytery level, is that we carve out time, and not carve it out. We actually build everything around that. So while we act as a governing body, you'll have the ability to worship with all of that diversity of folks that I just mentioned. But we also want to make sure that it's orderly, as we Presbyterians are so fond of. And so Robert's rules just gives you another definition of what you'll be able to do as a commissioner. And then just again, that last point is just to, if somebody catches you at church Sunday and says, you make sure you vote on this thing this way, you might just gently remind them that you were elected to use your discernment powers, and you're happy to take in their advice, but you're not bound as a representative to act on that. So,
Thanks.
any questions anybody might have at this point? Well, good.
All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what are we going to be doing, and what kinds of things does the presbytery do when we gather at this largest level. So, Brad's mentioned that there are things happening regularly in the life of the presbytery. We have committees and commissions that are doing work along the way. And so the great majority of what happens at any presbytery meeting outside of that time for worship and fellowship and play in this year is related to hearing the reports from those committees and commissions. So just to tell you, make sure you know a little bit about what our structure is. Um, I'll kind of walk you through what our committees are and what they do. So we have committees and commissions that are responsible for different things. So for pastoral leadership and that is related to the Commission on Ministry. You'll often hear that described as COM. Someone will drop that acronym without thinking twice. So, and at any point in time at these meetings or whatever, if you're not sure what an acronym means, just lean over the person next to you, nudge them, and say, "Hey, can you tell what is COM?" And if they don't know, go to the microphone and ask, "I'm sorry, I don't know what COM is." And I can tell you for sure, there's at least one other person in the room who's asking that same question, and will be glad that you paused us to answer it, get an answer for it. The Commission on Ministry is responsible for pastoral leadership, but also for congregational support. So when congregations are in need of something, they will talk about that will go to the Commission on Ministry. If their needs escalate to the point that the Commission on Ministry can't help them, we will appoint what the presbytery, we, all of us together, appoint what's called an administrative commission or an AC. That is not an air conditioner. Most of our churches, I think all of our churches actually have air conditioners at all times. So that is not about getting them cooled off, although usually an administrative commission by the end of its work has helped a congregation to shift. An administrative commission is also used when a congregation reaches the end of its life and moves toward dissolution. Um, Another big part of what the presbytery does in terms of business is it determines who our ministers are, and that is done through the Examinations Commission. So you met Janice earlier on our call, and is a new minister from another presbytery who's been received by the Examinations Commission. We have other ministers who might come, other people who are preparing for ministry, who have reached the end of their ordination process, and they come from the Examinations Commission and have to be voted on by the full presbytery. We have another group of people called the Commission on Preparation for Ministry, or CPM, who guide people through the ordination process. So there are a lot of steps, a lot of educational requirements, ordination exams. You heard that mentioned earlier on our call today as well. So those conversations are happening related to the ordination process at the Commission on Preparation for Ministry. The presbytery is also responsible for its internal processes and and money and budget. And on the work of that is coordinated by the Council of the Presbytery and the Operations Commission of the Presbytery. So you will likely hear from them at a meeting with an update on the budget or suggestions on how to make some shifts in the life of the presbytery so we can be more faithful. The other big area that we work on a regular basis is new church development or new worshiping communities. And these are coordinated by our New Church Development Commission, or NCDC. So, we rarely abbreviate council or operations. We might call it operations, but NCDC you almost always hear as NCDC, COM, CPM. So those are some of those things that just will pop up regularly, and you'll hear more about and all of these groups will bring reports. So if you look in the materials for the meeting that are available on the Presbytery website, you can see a written report from each of these committees and commissions. And some of them will be bringing an oral report to the Presbytery. So look for those on Tuesday. Another category of business that comes to us is overtures from our sessions. We don't have any of those coming to this meeting, but sometimes we will find them where a session sends us a formal request called an overture. It's not a musical piece, but it's a written request asking the presbytery to take an action on a matter of interest. So, most commonly in our experience here in Greater Atlanta, this is actually a request that the presbytery send an overture to the General Assembly, asking the General Assembly, the highest council of the Presbyterian Church USA, to take an action related to a particular issue. So that's the kind of business that we have at Presbytery meetings. Do you have any questions about that before we move on? Well, I would tell you, I've kind of alluded to the work that we do related to ministers and preparation for ministry. So this coming meeting, the spring stated meeting, has very little business coming to it, and almost all of the business that is on the docket for Tuesday's meeting is related to ministers and receiving minister and the ordination of ministers. So just want to make sure that folks understand a little bit about how someone becomes a minister. So um, when someone senses a call, they go to their session and receive that person eh, under what's called care for the ordination process. And then they come to the Commission on Preparation for Ministry of the Presbytery, and they manage the process related to that person. After a year or so, that person would come to the full presbytery meeting and present their story and ask for the broader presbytery to affirm their call as they move to being a candidate for ministry. So as they do that, they're taking courses, they're taking ordination exams, completing other requirements. And then they come to, once they've done all of that and they find a call to serve, maybe as a chaplain, maybe as a pastor in a congregation, um, then they come to our examinations commission. And that is the last examination before they come to the presbytery. Examinations commission examines the person. They hear a sermon from them, and then they examine them in theology, polity, Bible, and worship. And so all of those different areas show up in the course of that examination. And then after they've been approved by examinations, then they come to the broader presbytery and are voted on there. So there will be an opportunity. We have one person coming for ordination on Tuesday, and you'll have an opportunity to hear from him about his sense of call and where he's been called to serve. And then you'll hear from him um, about you'll hear there's an opportunity for questions for him. The examinations commission will ask him a question, on one of those areas, theology, polity, Bible, or worship, and and he will respond, and then others can ask a question as well. So the process is a lot simpler for a minister coming from another presbytery. They've already finished most of this. They just come through the examinations commission and are approved there. Any questions about this slide and how we vote on ministers? All right, Brad, you want to talk about how you can participate in the conversation at the meeting?
Sure. So what we hopefully will be very transparent so that at any point in the meeting, you'll know exactly where you are according to our docket. But what we will normally do would be to have, if there's action before the presbytery, then we would first receive a motion that would be duly put forth, and then there would be an opportunity to ask. I think this is right, but to ask questions first about that motion, and at that point, if you had a question, then there will be microphones that you can move to. And then once I, as the moderator, would recognize you, you would have an opportunity first to ask a question. And once we get through that and we've given an appropriate amount of time for questions to be asked, then we would put the motion before the body for discussion or debate. And there's been very little of that, quite honestly, in the over my time as coming to Presbyterian meetings, and I'm a lot like you, is that I would have kind of rotated through as a member of my session, but I have been more present over the last, I guess, 3 years because following General Assembly, where I was a commissioner, and we actually were established. We served in that role for the full 2 years until the next General Assembly. And so if there was a question that was there, we really needed to have a little bit better understanding. But once that, so Andy, correct me again if I'm wrong on this, but if we end up with the debate, and if you wanted to speak for it, we would have a microphone set up for those that would want to speak for. And if not, if you wanted to speak against it, then there'd be an opportunity. We try to balance that out back and forth, and then once the debate has either been ended because there were no more folks that wish to speak, or if we had, per Robert's rules, someone who wanted to end the debate or discussion, and that was duly adopted, then then we would be ready for a vote. So I would read the motion again, and then what we would ask you to do is when you register, you will receive a green piece of construction paper and a red piece of construction paper. And when I call for the vote, if you're in favor, then you would raise the green slip, hold that up, so that we could get a general sense. And then if you were opposed, you would raise your red slip. If it appears that, and I don't suspect at this meeting, since we do not have much business, but if we did, if we saw that it was a very narrow vote, then what we would do would be to go through that process again, but we would actually have counters amongst our group, and we would ask you to again raise your green if you were in favor, or your red if you were against, and we would count those before we declared the outcome of that decision. What we ask you to do, just like we did, is that so that the people know what your role is, whether it's teaching elder or ruling elder, and then the congregation that you serve in. And that's just, again, there's going to be usually usually it's about half and half. So it's a good mix. And it's just nice to know where. Carrollton might see something a little bit different than Trinity or Druid Hills or Shallowford, and that's okay. But it's just nice to have that context of who is making the comment. And generally, flows rather nicely. And one of the things I like about an organized meeting is that it does allow more time for that worship. So if we get this done so that it feels comfortable for everybody, it's transparent. If we're able to do that in an orderly fashion, then we can spend a little bit more time just enjoying God's presence with us in worship. And at Calvin Center, if we move through in an appropriate time, we've got the beauty of the camp and the fellowship that will be there to enjoy for the time that we're not in a meeting. So
Thank you, Brad. So I have these in my notebook here. So you'll get these are the red and green cards that Brad mentioned. We use these. So when you go to a microphone and you wish to be recognized, it's helpful for us to know whether you're speaking in favor or against, or if you're just not sure, just kind of wave them both and be like, I don't know. Um,
one,
but
one thing, Andy, I would say too would be since you'll probably be sitting around folks that are neighbors of yours, do not tear the little card, the little construction paper in two and give it to your neighbor if they were to say, I can't find mine or I didn't get one when I came through. If that happens, gently direct them back to registration because we need a full. Particularly if it ever comes down to a close vote, we want to make sure that we've protected the ballot, and we don't want to go overboard like we see in our public elections. But at the same time, we want to make sure that when you leave, whether you're on the side that was in green or the side that was in red, that you feel like your voice and your vote has been heard, and you can go back to your members and tell them that you carried out your duties in the best manner possible.
For sure. Yeah. So yeah, we do appreciate that. We don't want to make it overly complicated, but we want to make sure that there is some integrity to our process. So are there other questions you have about what to expect on Tuesday or the flow of the meeting or the broader life of the presbytery?
Well, I'm grateful for the group that's gathered together because having traveled all over the state, I love my folks in Carrollton as much as I do my folks in Stone Mountain or Hamilton Mill. And we had the wonderful opportunity to be at Trinity about a month ago with the installation of a new pastor. He and Hillside is just yeah, I've got my mother's in the Decatur address, so we are very interesting, I would argue, as a presbytery. One, because of the size that Andy mentioned, but also because we have, we've got. Yeah, I remember the days where Hamilton Mill was out in the country, and Carrollton still far enough removed from Atlanta to where they can say we're not in Atlanta when they want to, and they say we are in Atlanta when that works. So another thing that Andy, you might touch on because you probably could, is you might just talk about a little bit about what I think is a very unique but a very impactful part of our presbytery with our Korean brothers and sisters too, because you may hear when you hear acronyms, ECAM, and you might just mention that
Sure.
as well.
So ECCAM is the Evangelical Coalition of Korean American Ministries. They are a connected group of our Korean congregations, of some of our Korean congregations, who seek together to provide a space that is culturally and particularly language connected for the work of the church in a Korean cultural context. So they do some work and make recommendations to the presbytery through their own structures. And so we don't have anything coming from ECCAM at this meeting, but that is a good group to be aware of and a good way that our friends and colleagues and siblings in Christ in the Korean community feel connected to each other and are also able to deepen their connection to the broader presbytery. So.
And is it correct that, and we do, is it, Presbytery of Greater Atlanta, do we have the largest, population of Koreans within the, denomination, or, oh, if not, we gotta
I'm
be.
not total. I don't have those numbers. And there are a couple of presbyteries that are that are focused on Korean folks, so it would be difficult to compare with them. But we do certainly have one of the larger Korean Presbyterian churches in the PCUSA and Korean Community Church. It's about 1,500 members, so they are a substantial group in our midst.
Yeah. Well, anything else for the good of the order, Andy, that you can think of?
Not well, I would just say a word about timing and scheduling. So this is probably, as we've alluded to, it's a lighter load of business for the meeting. We hope you'll come and still be able to enjoy Calvin Center. There are opportunities beforehand beginning at 9 o'clock. Registration will open about then at 8:45, 9 o'clock, and we'll but there'll be time to explore Calvin Center. There's a hayride without hay, basically a tour of the Calvin Center facilities both before and after the meeting. So if you pre-registered for the meeting, you probably signed up for one of those activities. The meeting will start at 10. We hope to finish around 12, and then we'll go to lunch and have opportunity for some afternoon activities like canoeing and another hayride without hay if you missed it in the morning. Um, so we do want to we want to acknowledge this year's theme as a presbytery is faith like a child, and kind of this sense of play that we want to infuse all of our work with this year. And this meeting is a wonderful opportunity to do that. It gives us a chance to be together and enjoy one another, and in so doing, enjoy nature and God willing, enjoy God with it together. So, this is kind of like that first question of the Westminster Catechism. What is the chief end of humanity? To glorify God and enjoy God forever. And I think this meeting will be a wonderful opportunity for both of those things, to glorify God in some good worship and business, and to enjoy God in the fellowship and worship and nature along the way, and maybe even a little bit of the business along the way.
Right.
So.
Michael, did you have a question, comment?
I had a question actually concerning that. This is the first time I've been an elder before and went to session meetings, but it's been a long time. So when I registered, I didn't realize you had to pre-register for those activities. So I'm already registered. I tried to go back in. You cannot register for those activities.
I see some activities on your registration, Michael. If you want to email me, I can make sure that you're in the correct ones.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, anything you want to change, just send me an email. We'll get that updated. And it's not the end of the world if you didn't. There's some flexibility. We just needed a general number of how many people to expect.
Oh, got it. Got it.
Yeah, we just didn't want to surprise the Calvin Center with 100 people who want to go canoeing.
Right, right.
Yeah. And if you get there, I can give you a guided tour of the swimming pool because I know that very well.
Apparently.
And it was painted when we were down doing the pre-work, so we would not give you a roller, So, well, any other questions? Well, thank y'all for taking this time out of your John. Yes, sir. And you're muted.
if you have just a couple, 3 minutes, and I may be the only one here, but who doesn't know, but would you give us just a quick synopsis of the Calvin Center?
Sure. Andy, why don't you start and I
I
can add
can
some color to
I
it, but
can try. Yeah. So the Calvin Center is it's kind I think it's maybe the second or third camp facility that has been owned by the Presbytery of Greater Atlanta and its antecedent presbytery. So it was I think it was built around 1960 or started around 1960 by the Presbytery of Atlanta, as it was then known, which was in the southern part of the church. It became Greater Atlanta after the northern and southern church reunited. Um, and there, it actually was the evolution of camping ministries for the presbytery. If you've ever, last May, we were out at Smyrna Presbyterian Church and Campground, not in Smyrna, but in Conyers. And that out at Smyrna, that was the Presbytery's campground before Calvin Center. So in around 1960, um, the Presbytery bought the facilities and built Calvin Center and started camping ministries out there. Um, and it's mostly been over the years summer camps, and it's grown to connect with other camping ministries and opportunities for retreats and other such things that happen out there. They are current. So the Calvin Center about 15 years ago was spun out into its own separate nonprofit, and it operates independently of the Presbytery, excuse me, but has a covenant relationship with the Presbytery, and there is extensive relational work that happens between the two organizations. It used to be that the Presbytery paid all the bills, quite literally, and now, and about 15 years ago, all of that shifted. Brad, what else do you want to
I
add?
just would, to me, John, when I went there as an 11-year-old, it was like going to the end of the earth for me because we had very few interstates. Now, I'm guessing probably on a race day at Atlanta Motor Speedway, you're going to be able to hear all of the cars because as we've seen that shift in Atlanta, where Trinity back in the 50s would have been almost epicenter of Atlanta. What you're looking at now is that growth has just gone in every direction. So it was, I think my dad would have probably, as a builder and developer, probably would have been tapped to kind of help in those early years, thus the volunteer youth group, and probably the Presbyterians were made, the Methodists have a couple of camps and the Baptists at that time had a couple of camps. We probably were maybe a little late to the game as we saw more transplants come in with into Atlanta to be able to support the camp. And what I love about it now is I think it was a wise decision to make it its own 501c3. It opened up the door for grants and other things that you might not. There's an equestrian center down there now that, and as you might imagine, that property has just grown in value because it's become part of, suburban Atlanta. So a good investment, but like so many things, like so many institutions, if you maintained it the same way you did 60 years ago, you're probably struggling to figure out how you keep it operational. So that spinning it out as a separate 501c3 has just allowed what I think is just a healthy partnership between Presbytery of Greater Atlanta and I think, Andy, one of the items that will be acted on, or at least reported on, would be who's appointed to the Calvin Center board. And is it 50-50 or it's
At
heavily
least
more heavily
50% have to be related to a Presbyterian entity. So, yeah. And I think all
opportunity
but one of
for?
their members are
Yeah. Yeah.
are Presbyterian. So a
But
couple of them are
it's
from beyond our presbytery, but that also is
right.
showing the
But
broader
that's good too.
reach. Yeah.
But it's a great opportunity for individuals that have either a passion for camp as they grew up and emerged into adulthood to use their gifts to help. So if you know anybody that's interested, I'm sure you'll have a chance to meet the camp staff, and I'm sure they would love any positive input that you can give them. So.
Thank you. That's really great. I grew up in eastern North Carolina, and we used to go to camp at White Lake.
Yeah.
Some may know about that.
I don't know. I know. John and I worked in New Hope Presbytery in Raleigh before I came here, and I know it's and that's after Reunion Presbytery, but the Camp Albemarle is still
Right.
out there, and it's connected to New Hope. So yeah.
White Lake is down near Elizabethtown and
Yeah.
Whiteville and
Okay.
in that area.
That's probably in a different part of the Presbytery, in different Presbytery land. So yeah.
And it's interesting to see some ways that ability to kind of be a bit of a hybrid. One of my former colleagues on the Presbyterian College Board of Trustees lives in Asheville, and there's a camp there that borders National Forest, and what they've been able to do as a 501c3 is to actually host folks that would go into the National Forest and still be able to use the camp facility for Presbyterian youth retreats, like was mentioned at Covington. So, just working, if you think about it, it's really reaching out and serving a larger population with the camps that we have. And you'll hear a little bit about that from the welcome from the camp director. So, well, good. Well, we certainly don't want to keep you any longer. And Andy, I might ask you if you'd close us with prayer since I opened it. And again, we look forward to seeing y'all on Tuesday.
I'd be glad to. Thank you. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, moderator. Let us pray. God, we thank you for these faithful servants who are seeking to gather and do your work in the life together of the Presbytery of Greater Atlanta. As we make our way to our spring stated meeting on Tuesday, inspire us by the power of your Spirit to be about your work in this time and place. Help us to know how you are calling us to act and to live and to be together so that we might enjoy this time with one another, glorify you along the way, and in all things enjoy you in this time and forever. Through Christ our Lord we pray. Amen.
Yeah. Thank y'all.
Thank you
Have a
all.
great weekend,
you.
and we'll see you Tuesday.
See you Tuesday.
Thank you.